Hi, this is Jane Mason from WatchingPaintDry.com, and I am working on some leaves today that I'd gathered from a burning bush, and they're just at the point where they're beginning to turn red. So you can see that they're part red and part green. Here's one that's already turned, and you can see that this one is completely a beautiful, beautiful cranberry red. The interesting thing, or one of the challenging things in watercolor in working with reds and greens, is that they're complementary on the color wheel, which means they're exactly opposite each other. So if you mix them wet, they'll tend to turn gray, which is one of the reasons why I've gone ahead and I've started this one leaf, and I've put down a couple of layers of green so far. I drew the leaves with a watercolor pencil. This one happens to be a Dunkel, which is not one I'm usually using. I usually use a Derwent watercolor pencil. And you can see, I'll show you right here. In fact, I'll go ahead and pull this stem down a little bit. And it works just like a pencil, which is wonderfully fun. But when you add water to it, and in this particular case, I'm just using a Winsor Newton No. 6 round brush. And I've rinsed it in water, but I've dried it off just a little bit. And you can see as I add water, it actually blends with the pigment that's in the pencil and goes ahead and gives you quite a bit of color. I'm just going to leave that like that. The reason why I chose this red pencil for these leaves is because since these leaves are turning red, if I get some smearing on these leaves, which I will from the red outline, I'm hoping it'll just add to the seasonality of the color of the leaves that I'm working on. As I paint, we'll see how that works. Here was a line I changed, so I'm going to basically erase that line by using a little water. Can you see that line through there? I decided to make this leaf a little rounder, so I'm using my pencil to basically erase that line. It's also giving me a first layer of a pinkish color, which is perfectly fine since this leaf is a combination of a green and a pink. So I'll go ahead and leave a little of that pink here and there. And isn't that neat how it erases the pencil? You don't want to use it too dark because then you'll dig into the paper and it's harder to erase. But just the tiniest bit of water, and you can see I haven't re-wet my water. It has a zigzag edge, so I'm emphasizing a little of that zigzag edge while I have a tiny bit of water on my brush. Keeping track of the amount of water in your brush and on your paper is one of the most important things in being successful in watercolor. It takes a ton of practice, just oodles and oodles and oodles of hours. So I know it's frustrating. Here's another line I think I want to erase right here. I'm saying erase, but it's really watering it down till you can't see it anymore. This little one that came outside. Now this will give me a little bit of water out here, and I'll show you what I'll do with that. Since it left a little bit pink, I'll just add more water and blur it out. There we go. We'll never notice that this blurred a little bit right at that edge. I'm working on Arches. I think this is Arches 300-pound paper. It's a cold press paper, which means that it is kind of a rough surface. There is a surface named rough, and it's not that surface, but it's bumpy, and hopefully you can see in this light. This I just added some of the red to, so it's still going to be a little bit wet, so I'm going to go back to this. What's going to happen is I want to make this one edge a little bit darker, because this is do you see this edge here? This is what I'm considering is how should I say, the shadow basically that is made from this tiny, tiny little vein. Now the vein I haven't put in yet. I've just left the white of the paper for the vein. I'm going to continue to work on just filling in layers here. And I like to have a little bit different color green every time I come back to my paper. So I'm basically using a little bit of sap, a little bit of a yellow, a little bit of a blue, all sorts of different colors just to give a ton of variety. You'll see I'll eventually start putting some of the red in here, but I want to get a good base of my green in here first. This one I think I'm going to do, I've already started as green, so I can't make it completely red. I think I'll do then these two. Yeah, I think I'll do these two in this half and half, half green, half red kind of an illusion. And I will just, we'll probably speed this up a little bit so you can see, so it'll go a little bit faster. I'm assuming the light is coming from the same direction, so I'm going to put the shadow on the same side, which is, as I'm looking at it, is kind of the edge closest to me in terms of these veins is the one that's going to be more shadowed. Make your decision on that however you want to make that so it makes sense to you, or however you want to phrase it so you can remember what you're doing. I love this kind of painting. I find it very relaxing. Some people find it quite tedious, and I wouldn't want to do this kind of painting every single day because it is more laborious. But for me, many times I'm in kind of a contemplative mood, and or just a mood to kind of get in the flow and let my thoughts carry me wherever they want to go. And for me, this type of a study is easier than if I'm doing a painting that's looser, that you actually have to paint a lot faster. Sometimes it takes more concentration. That might seem contraindicated, right? It might seem like that's crazy, but that's how I find it. Sometimes the looser, the more abstract, takes more concentration. As you can see, I've gotten a little bit more water, and I'm adding a few, I don't know, dips and dots, and just again coming back with many layers to make this as interesting as I can. That last I picked was just the last color I picked, and I'll show you here. I like to keep a piece of paper nearby that I can test my colors. So you can see this is a very relatively intense kind of a blue-gray. Some people might call it almost a Payne's gray or something. And if I just tap a little bit of this, it's going to follow my wet paint, which I like. And I'm not doing the whole seam in this color because leaves aren't made that way. They aren't made with one paintbrush flow and then that's it. Particularly in the fall when they're really getting imaginative with their colors. I'm probably going to leave a little bit of that, although I'm going to take one of my greens and get a little bit of Indian yellow, one of my favorite colors. It just does such a great job of dulling down a green and making it more olive. Do you see how that green is a lot more olive than this blue green that we had? I'm going to add some of that here and there to, again, make the greens more interesting. Okay, I'm going to come back over these edges. Right now I've rinsed off and completely dried off my brush. And right now I'm going to see if I can lift some color from some of these places. So I lift a little color and then I dry off my brush. I'm going to lift a little color and dry off my brush. Lift a little. Again, this is to give more variety to these leaves. It's still a little bit damp, which is perfect for me. I am going to take my 6 Winsor Newton round, this is a sable brush, and again using just a little bit of water, I am going to add some marks and some dots here, and with a teeny bit of a paper towel, I am going to blot it. So as you can see, I've got a paper towel, I've wadded it up a little bit, and I'm blotting here and there. And what that'll give me is a more mottled look, a more irregular look, and I always enjoy that. I always enjoy something that looks more organic, more unpredictable, flawed, or uneven, And I'm, again, avoiding those little areas where I left the white. Taking my paper towel, and I'm using a clean space now so I don't put paint back down. To me, this is, and it's not looking exactly like this leaf, but I like the way that it's looking. And honestly, again, like we discussed before, that's the most important thing. It doesn't have to look like your sample that you're working from. It needs to look like something that's pleasing to you. I'm going to take my brush now, and I have a bit of paint on it. Actually a little bit more paint than I wanted, so I'm going to wipe it off. This is why it's such a good idea to have a sample piece nearby. And I'm going to blend this, so this will give us a dark edge, but not so dotted and dashed as it was before when I put those dark colors on it. So it'll give us a dark edge, which is what I wanted, because this edge on this one turns. There's a little bit of green on this edge, and at this point, because this leaf is already turning brown, I don't really care if the green and the red mixed together to give a brown on this edge. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. This is too much green. Taking off a little bit more green. Teeny bit more. There we go. And you can see how I'm just barely adjusting the color. There we go. That is giving us this kind of brown that this leaf has. And then on the outside of these, where it is, I'm going to move this one so I can have a little bit more room here. On the outside here where the serrations are, we also have some of the dark where it's turning. So I'll go ahead and add some of those. This will give it that extra dimension of the greenness, because we do see some green in here. It's not all red. I'm going to take a little bit of a burnt sienna light, I think. And it's interesting, as you're mixing paints, you can tell so much about the paint. This one felt very sticky as I was mixing it. And sometimes if a paint is sticky, it gives you an idea, not only is it fresh, but that possibly they have mixed it with honey. Paints that are gram paints, I think this is right, use honey as a binder rather than gum arabic as a binder, and so those are always stickier. And sometimes the gum arabic can just seem stickier on certain days and in certain paints than it does on other days. Okay, I'm going back to putting in this little bit of the dark edge. You can see this leaf is getting more complex, and I'm enjoying it. I hope you are too. If we go back to these now and remembering what we're looking at, I'm going to take out this red one. Remembering what we're looking at, these green leaves have this red blush in the center. And I think what I'm going to do to create that red blush is I'm going to use a flat brush. And this flat brush is this is a dewberry, and it is a number 10 flat, which really means, I think it's, gosh, that looks like, I guess that's a ½ inch. It looked like it was a ¼ inch, but I guess it's a ½ inch. Anyway, I'm going to take a little bit of this kind of magenta-y, pinkish color, and with my flat brush, I want it quite dry, so it'll give a illusion of being, there we go. Do you see how that's kind of granulating over the surface? That's what I want. I don't want it I don't want it even, so I'm going to kind of dot it on, and I'm paying attention to where my veins are. You really can stop whenever you want to. I'm just having so much fun. I'm just adding a few more layers. I've gone back to get a brighter intensity of the kind of magenta red that I was using, and rose that I was using, and for no other reason than I'm just having so much fun, I just don't want to stop. Now there's a real problem if you don't want to stop, because you can definitely get a painting that looks very overworked. So when you are about 80% done, I tell my students, go ahead and stop, because you can add more later if you want to. But it's definitely easy to add more later than trying to take something out. Okay, and notice there are some areas where it's more intense than others. So I'm going to put in a couple of those, and I want another couple dots so those don't stand out so much there. I like that. And with our red one here, which is this one, I think you noticed that I kind of went around those holes to make them look like they were maybe eaten by a bug or something. You can also, on any of these paintings, use a gel pen. And a gel pen might be a good idea. For example, if I wanted to emphasize where this edge was, or maybe add a little bit more where I thought that vein was. Or you don't want to overdo it with a gel pen, because I think it can distract from the painterly aspect of what you've got going on. So you can see adding a few details can help amplify what you want. In addition, you can use a white gel pen. I probably wouldn't use a white gel pen on these, but let's say I wanted to add a few little white dots or something. A white gel pen is something that tends to stand on top, so you can put it on and it'll stay white. Sometimes white paint will not do that as well. So I think as a little study on these leaves, I'm going to stop there. And you can see that it mimics the I'll turn this one over too. Actually, it's a little bit brighter than these leaves are, and I like that. And honestly, these little white lines that I hadn't noticed too much before, but if I wanted to create those as white lines, I could have done that with the white gel pen. If I want to give another illusion of these leaves actually sitting on a table, which is a little bit weird because they're kind of in a weird arrangement here, but I can also just pull out some of the color from the leaf and add a shadow down here. I'm going to add a little bit of the green so I get that brown color that I'm looking for. And let's pretend that we see that leaf. Yeah, I'm going to call that the shadow. Okay, if these weren't stacked like this, it'd be easier for me to show you other shadows. But a shadow doesn't have to be complicated, and I always enjoy pulling out a little bit of the native color from the leaf, or whatever it is, the orange, whatever it is, to help get me started on some of the shadow. So I hope you've enjoyed this little in-studio demo, and I hope to see you again next time.
See more videos at WatchingPaintDry.com. Thank you for watching. This is Jane M. Mason from Watching Paint Dry LLC.